this video, we're going to look at configuring conflicts in the scheduler, how to view them, as well as resolve them. First, I've got two events here, and I have a conflict rule that has been set in the schedule admin settings, and we'll take a look at those in a second. But first, just to show you what a conflict will look like, if I take this event and I drag it over, I will get an alert saying that a conflict rule has been violated, and it'll tell me the name of the rule that has been violated. It will also give me some brief information about the two events that are in conflict. Clicking that, you'll see that the events will become highlighted, and I will have a conflict indicator show up on the toolbar. Clicking on that indicator will actually bring up my conflicts panel. Now I have several conflicts in this area, so what I can do is rather than clicking on these conflicts to actually find it, I can actually choose Identify Conflicts. And what that will do is it'll actually select my conflict and then bring my schedule to the date where the conflict exists. And so I can see here it is actually highlighting the day where the conflict is. If I click my conflict again, it'll deselect it. Clicking it will return and actually show that conflict. Now looking at my conflict information, I have my conflict rule name. I have the start date and time of when that conflict exists. I have a resource or a user that is actually causing the conflict, as well as any status in the relationship and the overall limit determining the conflict. So conflicts are determined by choosing a user, user group, resource, or resource group, a particular status that could potentially flag that conflict, as well as the limit to the number of events with that particular status. In this case, I can have any status for a Houdini license, but I can never have more than one on any given day. And that is why these two events are currently in conflict. So now if I move this out of conflict, I can see that my conflict will be resolved and it will be removed from my list. Now let's look at another scenario. Here, I have an event in conflict, yet I don't see any other events that would be conflicting in this view. I can go into my context menu and choose Identify Conflicts. And now it's showing me that there's actually two conflicts that are happening here and the date of where it's happening. So the animators are booked more than once. And then I also have another one saying no person can be booked more than once. This brings up a good point that you can have multiple conflicts definitions affecting the same people and potentially being triggered at the same time. Now, the conflict isn't happening in this view, but what I can do is I can actually click on the button for the user or resource that is actually triggering the conflict. And that will take me to the view where the conflict exists, and I can see, oh, I actually have two events here that are triggering. One had a Houdini license attached to it, and that's why we saw it in the resource view, but in fact, the conflict is happening here. Now again, if I take my event and I move it out of the conflict zone, now I've resolved all my conflicts and my events are no longer highlighted. Now let's look at conflict definitions. If we go into Admin, Schedule, Conflicts, here we can see all the conflict rules that have been defined. Now, for example, if I click on my Houdini rule here, you can see that you can give a conflict rule a name, a brief description, and then there's a type. Now, all conflicts are either a resource type or a user type. So you do have to choose that prior to choosing what items they would be affected. In this case, because we have chosen resource, you can choose resource groups or resources. If this was a user type, you would be able to choose user groups or users. Now you can also attach multiple items to these. So it doesn't have to just be a single resource. You can actually choose multiple to be affected. Now, the conflict rule applies to each user or resource independently. It is not the joined combined total for all of those items. As we move down in the details, we can set the conflict rule to be triggered by a particular event status. The default is any, but we can choose particular status or multiple statuses to be included in this. And then we can set an overall limit for how many total events can stack that meet those conditions. In this case, I'm going to lower this value to 10. Once you have your conflict rules established, they will be immediately active inside the schedule. Conflict rules will be detected from the current date to 6 months in advance. When loading a view that includes the current day or any day within the next 6 months, The schedule detects all conflicts in this time frame. This ensures that you're aware of any upcoming scheduling issues that may need to be addressed. Whenever a specific view is loaded, a progress bar titled Checking Conflicts will appear at the top of the schedule during this process. If a conflict is detected, the conflict indicator will appear at the top of the schedule toolbar, notifying you of the conflict. Conflicts and past events will remain active for 1 month from the current day, allowing users to review and resolve any historical conflicts. After 1 month, unresolved conflicts in the past will be automatically removed the next time the view containing those conflicts is loaded. If any conflict rule is modified, the events will automatically all be rechecked the next time someone accesses the schedule. For more information on working with schedule conflicts, please review the NIM documentation or feel free to email us at support@nim-labs.com with any questions. Thank you.